welcome. So we are days away from a digital identification system for the underage people. All people under 16 will be forced off of Facebook. They will be forced off of YouTube. This area is teeming with cameras, and most of our suburbs are all across the world now with cameras. Digital identification is everywhere. Even our bank cards can now be tracked by our phones. You can imagine what they could do with your card in general. The casino has now introduced facial identification on the cards to gamble. Digitalization has begun, everyone. And I can guarantee you in 2026, the worst is gonna come. So how will digital ID affect you?
Well, it'll affect me very much. I won't be able to go online because the government will be tracking everything I do. And digital identity will then be used by corrupted police to do something evil, and I will get the blame because the digital identity will replace me as a person with an artificial number and register. Thank you.
I won't agree to it.
Well, yeah, I won't comply. No way.
So you've got a copy of the light there. Could you tell me about it? I know it's the new one out.
Yes, hello everybody. I'm glad to see all the people in the city enjoying the weather and the Christmas cheer. So at the moment I'm holding up a copy of the Light newspaper, printed in Perth by the people for the people, uncensored media. Now this is the most recent edition, edition 21. It came out on Thursday. So I'm going to read an article on the front page. If you can't see it, there's Santa Claus and two children with tears. And you can also read this online. So the article is called Censorship for Christmas. Well, that's not very good, is it? Not much of a Christmas present for everybody. And this is by Paul G. Conlon, who is a former Australian Army officer, senior engineer and author focused on digital autonomy and civil liberties. Knock knock. It's not the start of a joke, it's the sound I waited for every Christmas as a child. With German heritage, our family celebrated early, and that knock meant Santa's gift sack waited at the door. I later learned it was my father's knuckles and my parents' gifts. The one I remember most wasn't wrapped in paper, but in a lesson I've carried since. One year, more than anything, I wanted a Sega Mega Drive. It would have been the first gaming console allowed into our home, and earning it wasn't guaranteed. My parents weighed it carefully. Would it distract me from chores, affect school? Could I handle the responsibility? These were judgments only a family with skin in the game could make, not a rule reducible to age. When I finally unwrapped that Mega Drive, it wasn't just a present, it was a coming of age, a signal I was ready for technology that could shape my habits and attention. It taught me that readiness is built on preparation and parental discernment, not government dictates. That world ends this Christmas with the under 16 social media ban. According to esafety.gov.au, the Australian government is protecting young Australians through world first social media age restrictions taking effect on the 10th of December. Protecting children sounds noble, but behind that ornamental language sit two profound shifts. The quiet replacement of parental authority with national rulebooks and the rise of digital enforcement systems reaching far beyond social media and age checks. These changes unwind centuries of hard-won liberties. The Magna Carta began a long drift of power away from rulers. This policy pulls it back, and the human cost isn't acknowledged. Children need risk to mature. Riding horses, using power tools, navigating early responsibilities give young people measured exposure to consequences and growth. In fact, an Australian flight instructor can deem a 15-year-old ready to fly a plane solo. Yet that same teenager is now considered too fragile by Canberra to watch YouTube cat videos for another year. Is it any wonder our children struggle to form a healthy sense of self? If child protection is the metric, why was Pornhub excluded? Why are the platforms most effective at political debate and alternative viewpoints the first to be restricted? Safety isn't the issue, control is. Once age limits police the internet, compliance requires identification from everyone, and a government with perfect visibility holds absolute leverage. Even Green Senator David Shoebridge warned, they're making it up on the fly. 2.5 million young people are being disrespected and everyone's privacy treated like a joke. He's right. New restrictions and requirements appear weekly. That's how scope creep works. First social media, then the wider internet, employment, medicine, travel, finance. And once identity becomes the gatekeeper, those essentials become conditional, a playground for discrimination. Children lose rights of passage. Families lose rights of judgment. This isn't theory, it's unfolding now, in the weeks before Christmas. What legacy will we bequeath? Earned autonomy or dictated prohibition? Will our children's Christmases be merry or monitored? Now, I think this is an excellent article, and people really need to keep up to with what the government's doing, because a lot of people don't realise this is going on because it just keeps continuing, one rule after another. But this is very important, and it's the reason, one of the main reasons why we're here today. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hello everyone. In the past, we have had sensitive forces in play for our televisions and our movies. We've had values of G and R rating. Now, I took a look at the social media ban, and I couldn't help but notice that there's a several number of adult-only sites that were not on those lists. And these are sites that don't even need them to identify what their age is, but they're not on the list. The only people that seem to be on that list seem to be Facebook, YouTube, the X platform, places where they could hear information that isn't placed on the television. And the television, you see, doesn't report on a lot of the subjects in which we have reported, shown, and exposed in the past. And that is the problem. Last time I was standing here, I advised that they shouldn't be trying to digitally identify all these under 16s. They should be offering software to parents so that they can decide what their children can and cannot watch or do. Instead of it being Big Brother telling you what you can and can't do, it should be the parents' decision to make that decision. Now, I've got two nieces and two nephews. They've grown up in the social networking world, and they're perfectly okay. In fact, one works has studied MIT, and there's, the list goes on. But my point being this: they grew up with this empire of socialists growing, and we are all a part of this system which is coming into play. And there's nothing wrong with YouTube. And I point out the following: many educational sites that a child will require for their own education are linked to videos on YouTube for their very education. how will they monitor this in schools? A child is going to get past this, yes, and then they're going to punish the platforms with fines for a child finding a way past this system. This is a very flawed system coming into play. And next week I'm actually going over to going over to Next DC over in Malaga on the 11th at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm going to stand with some people with the whiteboard group. We're going to have some signs there. I'm going to stand there, and you know what? These places like Next DC are holding onto your driver's license records as it is. So that is how they are going to be able to determine who is the right age, because they're going to be backlogging it with other companies they already have. This is a giant cloud network that they're going to have to use. So I'm telling you, if we let this continue, we are going to be in some serious trouble. Look at the United Kingdom right now. They could not work without digital ID. It was terrible. And it refers to a verse in the Bible where it says, if you do not take the mark on the right hand or the forehead, then you will not be able to buy, sell, or trade. I'm looking around me right now. I see cameras on pillars looking at me right now. I recently got a bank card which tells me it has a tracking ability. I can find it with my phone, which makes me question, can they track that anywhere I go? It's coming, people. What you need to do is you need to go to the bank. And I don't say withdraw everything. No. You need to go to the bank. Probably should have put this out before. Right. You need to go to the bank. You need to go, get yourself your money out, and use the cash at the cash register of your checkouts. You need to make sure that those people in these buildings all around us at work are receiving cash. And they receive cash, it keeps their jobs there. The machines won't take over.
That's right.
Do not let the machines take over. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Alan. Well, good afternoon, everybody. We're in front again of the Pharma City, once again peddling the vaccines, the quaccines, the damaging jabs that have been injuring people for the last 5 years. And now we have the US FDA admitting that 4 children died from these vaccines. A bare admission of the tip of the iceberg over the hundreds of thousands that have now been injured and killed by these vaccines. And the number is almost certainly much higher than this, because every vaccine incident is not reported with a special number. It's amalgamated a whole lot of injuries under one number, so we can't track the actual number of people killed. Yes, I suppose most people already know me as Dr. Mark, that I have previously wanted to be an immunologist, and there back in 1986 I discovered the corruption, and it just put me off from medicine for all time after that. But I only became awake to the vaccine menace about 2017. It took me much longer to wake up, because I had been misinformed there that vaccines were safe back in 1986, because I was just young and naive, and when I made the connection between autoimmune disease and vaccines, I was told that vaccines had been thoroughly tested and found to be entirely safe. So when I started to hear the truth, it took me quite a few years to realise that I'd been misled those many years ago, and that there was a very big conspiracy behind all this mess. And the real horror of the pharmacies pushing these vaccines today is because so much of this research was done in countries like African countries as well as in India, and there were massive injuries and deaths from the polio vaccine in India, which the Indian government stupidly allowed by allowing Bill Gates back in to start jabbing the people, even though India had 15 years previously kicked out Bill Gates and his vaccine group for causing thousands of injuries to people in India who'd received the polio jabs. So what else would you like me to discuss? Other facets?
Surveillance state?
Okay. Yes, and the other important here is the digital surveillance. The COVID vaccines were merely the introduction to this, because it has been shown that in many vaccines they inject some sort of metallic radioreceptive substance into it that causes you to be easily trackable through surveillance. And far worse than that is the fact that the people who are peddling these jabs, these vaccines, are the same people who want to peddle this digital surveillance, in other words, digital identity upon us. And this digital identity basically creates an artificial you, and they want you to identify with it all the time. And this artificial you will then be used by corrupt officials to commit crimes for which you will then get the blame. So digital identity is absolutely and completely intolerable, because it's being used and will be used to shut us all down and essentially turn the country into a police state. And many police have already resigned in disgust over it, so the government will unfortunately be trying to recruit very naive people into the police force to police this digital identity against us. We're just hoping that the majority of people will start to wake up, and I think we can be fairly sure the people who've been vaccinated will, but the problem is that the mainstream media is keeping up a continuous barrage of nonsense about people needing to accept digital identity because it's going to get rid of corruption. Now that claim is absolutely wrong, because by making more electronic surveillance on people, those who are corrupt will learn the ways to get around it, and it will simply make it harder to track real criminals than what we have now. So the digital identity is merely invented by the very rich, plus the government, who are their tools, to control us all the more. And that's why we have to also continue to attack these jabs, these pharmacies which are peddling these jabs, because these jabs cause brain damage, not only strokes, etc., but they dull people's minds, as many have described to me, and that makes people more accepting of all the more corruption that's going to be created by the government. These ideas were thought out decades ago, and this program is gradually worsening as they push on from digital identity, and eventually, especially with emerging trouble in Venezuela and in the Middle East, we're very likely going to be involved in major war, and the government will start making more excuses to lock us down, both from claiming there's another pandemic, which now is redefined to mean only infectious cases, not deaths, as well as blaming people for spying and making up fake stories that we have committed these crimes, when it's actually digital identity in our name that has committed these crimes. Our human rights have been utterly violated by our government, and the unfortunate pharmacies and doctors are bought off by being paid to give these jabs, and being paid even more to keep quiet. So I hope everyone will listen for the future and see that we're in for a very rough time ahead once digital identity is brought in.
What about the under-16 social media ban?
I was asked about the under-16 social media ban. This will not be effective to a great extent, because many young people know the electronic surveillance system far better than I do. I'm an oldie, I don't have a lot of that knowledge there, so they will be able to get around it relatively easy. But the real reason for instituting the under-16 ban is the attempt to track everybody, because we don't know if you don't know if someone going online what their real age is. They can always use false identities, but this will be used gradually to extend the age upward and eventually catch us all in the trap, so that we can't go online and find out anything without our records being tracked by the government, and this being used finally to target us and arrest us or fine us by destroying all our savings and all our credit cards. So this under-16 ban is basically the thin end of the wedge, and we need to be aware of that, because the surveillance is only going to become worse, particularly as political situation worldwide continues to deteriorate.
Thank you.